Hello, CC Essentials families. My name's Erica, and I wanted to do a video for you today about the student binder or student notebook. I think the first thing to think about is, what is it? Why do you do it? So what is the purpose behind it? And there are two things that I am aiming for with my student notebook. One, I want my child to be independent in her schoolwork. So I can give her a list of the things that she needs to do for the week or for the day, and she can look at that and know that if it says editing and we're in week 3, she knows where her editing work is. She can find that, she can do that, and she's independent in doing what I lay out for her. She can also look through her list and make those decisions. What am I going to do next? Am I doing all my editing today? Am I going to do a little bit? So there's some independence there with her work. Another aspect is responsibility. I want to give her a place for her things so that she has a home. Her papers can go in that. She is responsible for getting her things to class. When I tell her to pack her bag for our community day, she gets her things in there. And if we make it to community day and she doesn't have her paper for IEW, then it's because she didn't put it in the home that I gave her. So that responsibility and the independence are the two real keys that I'm looking for in making a binder for my student. Another key thing to keep in mind as I walk you through this and show you everything is that it's really important to talk to your tutor about what needs to come to class. Even as I've been laying this out and deciding what I want to show people, I've thought about different ways that I can do this. So you keep in mind what needs to go to class. Maybe you want to do a binder that's just the things that need to go to class, and you do a binder that's separate for what you want to keep at home. Maybe you do one binder of all of it and just make sure that you have everything together. There are lots of different ways to do this. When you find one of those lists that says a student notebook and here are all the things to put in it, really the goal is for you to make it your own, make what works best for you and your student. So I'm hoping by showing this all to you, you'll be able to see the options and make those decisions for yourself, because looking at that sheet of paper that lists all of these different things can be confusing, especially to a first year who doesn't know what most of it means. So let's get started. My student binder starts with a pencil pouch here that has things that are necessary for class. So for my class, pencil, pen, eraser, dry erase marker, wet erase marker, whatever your preference is, and then a way to wipe that clean. I just have a sock that we lost its mate for, and that makes a perfect eraser. I have also included in here dice and a deck of cards. Those are things, like I mentioned, that you could ask your tutor about. Do we need those in class? If you don't need them in class and you want to find a different place for them at home, then it just takes up less space in what goes to class with you. But really, pencil, pen, marker, something to wipe clean with are good things to easily have on hand in the front of your pouch. The deck of cards is something that we use at home. We also play some games in class with the deck of cards. As a tutor, I usually only have one deck for the whole class, so I don't usually require everybody to have their own. But at home, we do them basically as flashcards. What I have done, I have taken the jack and labeled it as an 11, the queen a 12, the king a 13, and those aces I made 14. If your student you feel is strong enough with their 2s, you could take those 2s and make them into 15s. That way you're getting through that full range of what we're working on in foundations. Another option is I found a set of cards from a game called Rage. I have no idea what the game is. All I know is that there are 6 sets of 0 to 15 within this set of cards. So this is another way to work on your numbers and increase your students' fluency with adding, with multiplying, with working with numbers in different ways. Whatever makes it interesting and fun for your student is really the goal. I have a folder here where I have the English grammar trivium table and the quid et quo. They are not required. If you have them, they are great references to have right there on hand. If you have a binder that has a front pocket, That's also a good place to put them in the front and back pockets so they're easily accessible. My binder, although I love these binders because they flip all the way around and make chart work really easy, they do not have front and back pockets. So I have a binder in here instead. To begin, I have a charts section, and this is probably the biggest section of the binder. The first sheet I have is called Grammar Mastery Charts, and this is page 397 of the EEL. And I have printed this out and I've highlighted what is new for each week. I talked about my student being independent with her work. My goal is for week 5 for her to look through that list and determine, what do I need to practice? I'm going to do my charts for 20 minutes. What is most important for me to do there? I know chart A really well. I'm not very strong on C, so I'm going to work on chart C today. So for me, this list is here so that over her 3 years, she will become more independent. Same thing for the scope and sequence on the back. This is page 20 of the EEL. It might be something that your student finds useful. It might be something they never look at. So it's a good reference. I love it in my binder. Might not be something that your student needs or wants in there. The next page I have here is the Glossary of Abbreviations. It's 396 of the EEL. And I have included that so my student has a quick reference of abbreviations. As my student knows her charts better and she can tell me things back when I ask her questions, I then allow her to use the abbreviations. So simple, compound, complex, compound, complex. She can do S, CD, CX, CD, CX. And I'm okay with that because I know she knows those. So it allows her to do more in that 20 minutes or whatever time frame I give her that I expect her to do chart work. She can do more in that time frame and review more charts. So I like her to have access to those abbreviations so that we're all being consistent with them. So this chart section mainly has the charts. Chart A through Q. On the left is the master chart so that she can look at it and see it. And on the right is the blank student chart so that she can fill it out. The ultimate goal is for my student to be able to take a blank piece of paper and write it all out. It's not just about writing them. So some students struggle with writing. Talk about them. Ask, what are the 4 structures? What are the 4 purposes? What are the 7 patterns? Ask those questions. Talk about them. We do mainly write in my family because that comes easy, and that is how my daughter memorizes and learns things well. We've written it in chalk out on the driveway. There are songs that go along with them. So there are lots of different ways to learn the chart, but it is important that that is part of their daily routine, is that they're learning the grammar of grammar, and we do that through the charts. So this is an important section. Some people laminate these instead of putting them page protectors. I prefer the protectors because they wipe clean easier. I've had an issue with lamination. For these charts, I recommend ultrafine dry erase markers or wet erase markers. That's your preference. It still is hard to fit everything in some of these boxes sometimes. I just tell my student to do the best you can. If what you're writing goes into a next section, just write what you know, erase it. Write what you know, erase it, and keep working your way through the chart in that way. Or get a pen and paper and just print out a blank copy of one that they really struggle with and really want to get everything in those boxes, because a pencil or a pen is going to work much easier getting that information in there. So there are lots of ways to do charts. Don't feel like this is the only way to do it and you have to do it this way. Charts are something that your tutor probably wants you to have in class, either through the trivium table or copied like this so your student can see them and reference them, and as they talk about it in class, it needs to be right there and easily accessible. So the next section I have is labeled sentences, and these are the weekly practice sentences. This is page 435 and 436 of the EEL. So my student has the list of sentences, and I can tell her, do sentence 2. And she can see the sentence, she can write it, she can go through the analytical task sheet and work on that independently and bring it to me and we talk about it, or sometimes we sit down and we talk about it together and go through it completely together. Again, it's working on that independence. So after the sentences, I have an analytical task sheet in a page protector. Again, this way she can write it out, wipe it clean, and reuse it. If you want to have a hard copy, then you can print those out double-sided and have them right in there so that your student can fill them out. We do a few hard copies, that way we have that record of how things were when she started, kind of in the middle, and then the end, and we can see that progression, especially if you're in a state that requires a portfolio or does an assessment. This is an easy thing to present for that whole process. As our sentences get larger and more complex during the year, this little space on the analytical task sheet is not big enough really for diagramming. So I've put a blank sheet of paper in a page protector. This gives her plenty of space to diagram any sentence that comes up during the year. After the analytical task sheet, I have the quid quo. There's a copy here in a basic format, and there's a copy that is a detailed format, and those are page 439 and 441 of the EEL. If you have the quid quo, then you don't need to put that in here. You've got the whole quid quo that folds out and gives you plenty of space to look at a sentence and look at each word and determine what part of speech and all those things that we're looking at with our quid quo. Lots of space on there. This also gives you more room for diagramming. So again, if you have this, then you don't necessarily need that sheet and a page protector that I mentioned. The quid quo also has the question confirmation, which is something that I would make a copy of and put in my student notebook. I would recommend that. I do not have it in here right now, but as I've gone through this process and thought more about things, that's something that I'd like to put in mine. And it has a couple of other charts that are not on the trivium table. After the quid quo copies that I have in the notebook, I have a sample of the analytical task sheet that is on page 61 and 62 of the EEL. On page 63 is the quid quo sample. And then finally I have page 58 and 59 of the EEL, which is diagramming examples. This can also be found on the quid quo. So these pages are just samples to help my student if she needs them. If your student is comfortable with diagramming and has worked through these things, then these are pages that you wouldn't necessarily need. So my third section is entitled Editing. And the first thing I have here is a copy of page 151 of the student resource packet. It is a page of proofreader's marks. So my editing section has each of the 24 editing exercises that you can find in the EEL. So each week's lesson has a sheet of editing exercises. So my student has all 24 weeks of editing exercises right here. So if we're on week 3 and her sheet of things to do says editing, she can go to week 3 and do the editing work that needs to be done. My goal is for her to make those decisions on whether she does it all in one shot or she does a little bit each day. And the way these pages work is that you fold over this side here and your student sees a scripture that is not capitalized. It doesn't have proper punctuation marks. And their job is to go through and find those mistakes and mark it correctly. And then they can open this up and they can see if there are things that they missed or did they find all of the mistakes. It also has a list of the punctuation and capitalization rules, the spelling rules, and the homophones here, if that is part of what you're doing in Essentials at Home. My next section is entitled Spelling. And so here I have given my student a copy of the punctuation and capitalization rules, as well as the spelling rules. Those are page 459 of the EEL and 465 through 467 of the EEL. So they have those rules right there, easily accessible. I've also given her just blank paper, so as we go through spelling lists, she has a paper easily accessible for her to write those things down. So the last section I have here is just a little section on math. I've given her a reference sheet on powers, squares, and cubes, so she has that information easily accessible, and she has her own 1 to 36 number knockout board and a blank board so that we can fill that in, change the numbers up, and make it different as often as we want. So that is what I have in my EEL binder. So my second binder for my student is a writing binder, is what I call it. So during class, when we do IEW, this is what she pulls out, so she has reference to the things that she needs. This is where she keeps her papers. This is her writing binder. I chose to purchase the student resource packet that comes in a binder. It is sold both through CC and IEW, and I think it is an excellent resource. It has references on the front to dress-ups and the sentence openers and prepositions. It also has these reference pages of each of the different units on the front and the back. It also has decorations, the advanced styles. It has just great references all over the binder itself. And then within the binder, it comes with the pages tabbed, and there are certain pages in here that are color-coded so that you can easily find that blue section for the strong verbs or the pink section for the ly adverbs. It has been a great resource. We use it all the time to look up new words. I'm going to encourage my student this year more to read through the units, and we'll work on that together to just help reinforce what we're doing in class, what we're doing at home, helping her to learn it better as we go through IEW. So the writing binder starts out with the SRP, the student resource packet. I, as a tutor, recommend that my students bring their student resource packet with them. That way I can point them to certain pages. We can talk about it. My goal as a tutor is to help the parents to use the resources that they have. They have information at their fingertips, and I want you to be able to use it. So in class, I want to point out where things are and reference things so that if you have a question, you can find it. They can certainly come to me and ask me questions, but they have that information at their fingertips also. So I want to make sure that I am utilizing that information well. So after the whole SRP here, I have a tab for vocabulary. This is page 250 and 251 of this year's writing book. We are in the ancient history-based writing book this year. So these page numbers will vary every year. And this is the list of vocabulary words. It has each lesson, what the words are, and the definition of each word. I also have some paper here for her. That way she can practice these words, write them in a sentence, whatever we decide to do with these vocabulary words to help her learn them. I have that paper here. You might also put a pencil pouch in here so that your student can put the cards if you so choose. I found that to be a little bulky, so each week when we do new words, we cut them out of the student book. They're on nice cardstock. I laminated them one year, but didn't laminate them last year, and they held up just fine. So I think the lamination is unnecessary, but that's up to you. You can hole punch all those cards and put them on a ring clip. You could also put them in an index note card holder. And that's what we've done, is we just have them in a little box to keep them safe and keep them all in one place usually. I should probably put them in a box and put a clip on them. That would really guarantee they all stay together. But the cards are really helpful because they have the word and they have a picture on it that helps to reinforce the word and help them learn the definition better. Let me say this also, that the vocabulary is not required. It's not something that's done in class. It is suggested, and I think it's really helpful. And a lot of the students really enjoy it. They always tend to come up with one word that is their favorite word for the year, and they put it in every single paragraph that they can, and they're using it the next year and the year after that also. The next section is tabbed writing. And I have our writing schedule through the year, so my student, again, can see what's going on. We're on week 3. Oh yeah, we're in the retelling and narrative unit, and this is the lesson we're doing, and she can see these things. Whether she's going to use it or not is a different story, but I have the reference here for her. That sheet should come from your tutor because it will vary a little bit from community to community. On the next page here, I have symbols and abbreviations. This is page 43, and it comes from the Blackline Master that you get with your purchase of the TWSS. So there's a blue sheet inside that binder that gives you extra downloads, and this goes along with the TWSS. So this is page 43. There are some different references there. There are lots of different sources. So when you're doing Unit 3, that retelling of a narrative, there are some extra sources in there at different grade levels if you were in need of different sources. Those are there, so be aware of that. The next sheet I have here is page 145, and this is the student resource packet. This is a place, it says a stylistic technique quiz. This is just a place where my student can, as we learn them, keep track of the dress-ups as we go along, the sentence openers, the decorations. On the back side of that is another option, if you would prefer. This is page 171 of the TWSS, or page 225 of that Blackline Master download that I mentioned. And this is an already printed out and filled in list of all the stylistic techniques. So fill it in yourself, just give it to them, your choice. I probably wouldn't do both. So in this section, I have just blank paper so my student can do her rough drafts. You could do keyword outlines on here also. I generally just do the keyword outlines right in the book. I look at the book as a consumable and let her use it. It hardly makes it through the year. And for the most part, every time we come through the next cycle, IEW has updated the books, so it's a new edition every time we come to cycle 1 anyway. I do keep my teacher one. Maybe next time we come to cycle 1, my teacher edition will be reusable. We'll just have to wait and see. So after the loose paper, I have a folder. And this is just here so my student has a home for her writing. When she has her final products, they can go in here, and that way they make it to class safely and they're kept nice and neat. Also, if she's in the middle of doing something and she wants to stick her rough draft in here, she can slide things in here and keep everything together. This is its home. The last thing that I have in this section is this printout. It's called the Weekly Literature Response Sheet. This is page 247 and 248 of the Ancient History-Based Writing book for the student. Again, this isn't required, but this is a nice sheet if you're doing some reading, either read aloud or your student is reading independently. This gives some great ideas to look for vocabulary, words that they don't know, write down and look them up. Look for dress-ups, things that we've been talking about in class, other stylistic techniques that they see. If something jumps out at them, keeping note of those things, and then you can talk about that to your student later, or they can write about it. It also calls for a summary, writing the most significant events. And this is just a nice suggestion, a nice prompt, especially for your older students who are maybe doing some of the suggested reading. So if you look back at the schedule that you should get from your tutor, all the way to the right are 2 columns that are at-home suggestions. So I mentioned the vocabulary is something for home. The last column is called literature suggestion. And IEW lists some books that go along well with the cycle that we're in. This book is an ancient history writing book, and so we have some great suggestions for reading during the year, depending on the ability of your child and whether this is something that you want to undertake or not. This is not required, it's just a suggestion. So the Golden Goblet, Detectives in Togas, the Bronze Bow, these are the things that are suggested for this coming year. And you can use those in conjunction with that literature response sheet if you like. So I think that is everything that I have in my student binders. We have one binder that is grammar. So during the grammar portion of class, that's what she pulls out, and everything else should be put away. During writing, she pulls out her student resource binder that has her writing in it and her vocabulary and all of those things that are related to writing, and she has her ancient history source book. My goal as a teacher to keep her things in order, put things away that she doesn't need, only really have out what is necessary for that time. And this is an opportunity to teach them these skills that are valuable for the rest of their lives. So I hope seeing everything laid out helped you get a better sense of what you want to make for your students. I hope that you have a great rest of your day and a wonderful year coming up in Essentials.